Good evening. We've just been graced by the Queen. Yes, that was Aretha Franklin singing Nessun Dorma. And our co-host will say a bit more in a little bit. Welcome to Black Mental Health. I'm sorry, Black Mental Health
Matters.
Yep. Peaceful Existence and Psychological Survival. This program is brought to you by the Friends of the James Brown African American Room and the Newark Public Library. My name is Dale Colston, and I'm the principal librarian at the James Brown African American Room of the Newark Public Library, Newark, New Jersey. Tonight, I'm joined by my co-host, Linda McDonald Carter, my colleague, fellow J-Bar librarian, Reggie Blanding, and Diego Quintero, the supervisor of our IT department, are providing technical support. We thank them both. Our space at the library was named in honor of the late James Library Brown, a poet, librarian, activist, and influencer who is instrumental in making sure that the library seek and maintain books and resources and present programs celebrating the African American experience. I would like to acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Lenni Lenape First Nations on which we are learning, laboring, and organizing today. We also recognize the devastation and the continued legacy of the transatlantic slave trade, which contributed to present-day systemic racism and oppression. We want to acknowledge the lives of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain, Sandra Bland, and countless others. We are working to honor their legacy. Black Lives Matter. May I kindly remind you, if you have not done so already, to please fill out your census form today. We need to be counted. Please remember to register and vote this November. You may have seen on the flyer a line that said, "Take care of y'all mentals." In what was perhaps his final press conference as a running back, Seattle Seahawks great Marshawn Lynch redirected the conversation from him to new and young Black NFL athletes. He, in his own way, spoke directly to these men, lovingly referring to them as Africans. In a word of caution and encouragement, he says, take care of y'all bodies, take care of y'all chicken, which refers to money, and take care of y'all mentals, because we ain't lasting that long. Mr. Lynch uniquely encouraged those struggling to practice self-care. Let's have a listen to a piece of the press conference. And Diego, would you please play that YouTube clip for us?
Sure. Just bear with me.
Sure. While we're waiting, we just want to thank everyone for their patience, and thank you for joining us this summer evening. Thank you.
Now, I done been on the other side of a retirement, and it's good when you get over there and you can do what the f you want to. So I tell y'all right now, while y'all in it, take care of y'all bread. So when y'all done, you go ahead and take care of yourself. So while y'all at it right now, take care of y'all bodies, you know what I mean? Don't take care of y'all chicken, you feel me? Don't take care of y'all mentals, because look, we ain't lasting that long. You know, I had a couple of players that I played with that, you know what I mean, they no longer here no more, they no longer. So, I mean, you feel me, start taking care of y'all mentals, y'all bodies, and y'all chicken for when y'all, you know, ready to walk away. You walk away and you be able to do what you want to do. But I appreciate it. Thank y'all. I have a good day.
Thank you, Diego. So we'll put the entire Marshawn Lynch video and on our Facebook page later on. And Also, former wide receiver New York Jets Brandon Marshall is also doing work in this area. He and his wife, Michi Marshall, have a foundation called Project375.org, which is dedicated to the education, support, and treatment of mental health. So I just wanted to mention those two who are trying to make a difference in this world. So let's all be helped now. The co-host for the evening, Linda McDonald Carter, is an attorney and professor of paralegal studies at the Essex County College in Newark. She is also a founding member of the Friends of the James Brown African American Room. Please join me in welcoming Linda McDonald Carter.
Thank you and welcome everyone. I hope you all enjoyed Aretha singing Pavarotti. She was asked to do it a minute before she sang. And I think that's incredible, just like we are. First, I want to take the opportunity to introduce Ayana DaSilva, and for disclosure, she's my niece. And first, starting with Ayana. Ayana is the founder and clinician of Growtherapy, LLC, a private practice started in Montclair, New Jersey, but currently operating in Wenatchee, New Jersey. She specializes in individual, group, and family therapy. She has over 15 years experience as a licensed clinical social worker and has an MSW graduate. She's an MSW graduate of King University. Ayana specializes in techniques for multicultural schema, Gestalt, and Minuchin family therapy models. She has experience working with a broad spectrum of clients with mental health challenges. Among her areas of expertise are cognitive behavioral therapy and trauma-focused CBT. Ayana is an interactive, culturally sensitive, strengths-focused therapist. Her therapeutic approach is to provide support and practical feedback to help clients effectively address personal life challenges. She integrates complementary methodologies and techniques to offer a highly personalized approach tailored to each client. With compassion and understanding, she works with each individual to help them build on their strengths and attain the personal growth that they're committed to accomplishing. Ayana was an adjunct professor of sociology at Mcdonnell College and is a certified educator of infant massage. Our second presenter is Simona Badger. Simona is a licensed clinical social worker licensed in the state of New Jersey. She received her bachelor's degree with a major in sociology from Herbert H. Lehman College. She received her master's of social work degree from Fordham University. She majored in clinical social work with a certification in law and social work practice. In 2013, she completed her postgraduate program at New Jersey Institute for Psychoanalysis, Child and Adolescent Psychotherapy Certificate Program. She started her private practice, empowerment and consulting services in Newark, next door to me. Her mission is to meet the needs of the underserved through psychotherapy, empowerment, and education to strengthen and inspire individuals to reach their full potential. She provides comprehensive mental health services, prevention, and education services to women, men, families, children, and adolescents, and underserved populations affected by health disparities, trauma, and self-identity issues and poverty. She specializes in Afrocentric and culturally sensitive therapy. She honors collectively healing, spirituality, and racial identity work in her treatment. So with that, we'll start with Ayana DaSilva, and Ayana will give us an overview of what she does and why.
Good evening, everyone. I am so excited to be with you all this evening. This is by far one of the coolest things I've ever done because being born and raised in North New Jersey, I got my library card, 1985. Mom, my mother is on somewhere. I tried to find the library card, but I couldn't find it, but I have it in my basement. So I'm going to prove it. But so this is so awesome, again, to be with you all. So kind of to give you, like Aunt Linda said, an overview for my talk tonight. So the mission of my practice, Growtherapy, for the past 7+ years now, has been to provide mental health treatment that not only considers, but honors the multicultural needs of each of my clients. My goal in starting the practice was to provide sound mental health that is inclusive and validates and also explores the cultural and racial and socioeconomic, sexual orientation and religious status and background of the individuals that I serve and that appreciates these aspects of the individual's life and experience, as most to do with what has either added to the complexities they have and will experience or endure in life, and or what makes them resilient despite these complexities. About 75% of my clients do identify as Black, and this informs my style of treatment and approach as a clinician to use ethnic sensitive assessment tools like the LEARN model, where the acronym stands for L, listen to the cultural perspective of the client. E, explain the overall purpose of the interview and the intake process, to make the individuals aware that I am using this information solely for the purpose of providing treatment for the individual. And we talk largely about HIPAA and their rights and keeping this information confidential. A is to acknowledge the racial and cultural concerns of my clients, and R is to recommend a course of treatment through collaboration only with the client. So the client will know the importance of their participation, their very active participation in the treatment planning process. And lastly, N, negotiating a treatment plan that weaves the client's cultural norms and the life ways into the treatment and the use of the modalities that we determine would be best for the treatment. And all this keeping in mind that historically in a white supremacist country, Black people were not included in psychological research. And additionally, I specifically aim to provide a safe space to process racial trauma in the context of group and individual therapy, addressing and acknowledging the traumatic stress of the insidious racism and psychological and intergenerational trauma and its causes that lead to quite often hidden emotional wounds that almost always cause physical pain and medical conditions.
Maybe let's check the Twitter.
Okay. Thank you. I guess, Simone, you want to do your overview now?
Yes. Most of my overview is in my PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this wonderful honor. Thank you for the Newark Public Library. My private practice is a few steps away from the library, so this is an amazing honor. So glad to be here. Usually I'm seeing clients all day into the late nights ever since this pandemic happened. And so this is really a wonderful experience to be able to connect with the community about Black mental health. So my practice is in Newark, and I opened it in 2017. When I started, I knew I wanted to do therapy a little different. I've always worked in the inner city. I'm naturally, was raised in New York, and I've worked in Harlem. I've worked in the Bronx as a social worker, and it really took working in all these different cities for me to realize that I needed to really focus on the Black community and to not continue with the Eurocentric approaches that we were taught in graduate school. And so it was a rude awakening for me in 2017 when I opened my practice. And so just wanted to show you the PowerPoint presentation so that you can have an idea of the different types of services that I've been providing. I do provide individual, family. You could go to the next slide. Diego, you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So as you can see here, that's me in my private practice. And from the banner, you'll see I provide individual therapy, family, couples, play therapy, We have right now a Black Women's Empowerment Group, which we're holding on Saturdays bi-weekly. In the past, we've had a men's trauma group. I currently also have a grief group, and that's really addressing the racial disparities that came out of COVID-19. So all of the clients who attend that group are Black who were affected in some way by the COVID-19 pandemic. I also do a lot of outreach in the community regarding dating violence and domestic violence. And so I was forced to start my program really training young people and young adults around healthy dating and also around sexual violence. What's also unique about my practice is that I also do immigration evaluations because I'm a forensic social worker. And so that allows me the opportunity to really meet individuals who are incarcerated. And most of these clients are Black, people of color, who are on the verge of being deported. They have all these asylum cases. And so sometimes I'm in my office and sometimes I'm doing these evaluations in the prisons. I think, just providing an array of services for this community is something that definitely has been a shift, a difference in terms of not just providing therapy, but also workshops and allowing clients to have a safe space to really get the services that they're looking for, but in a strength-based approach. You can go to the next slide, Diego. So this is a mental health check-in. This is one of the things that I do with my clients. If you look around my office, you'll see I try to make it very warm and make sure that it represents the clients who are coming to me. And so a lot of my resources and handouts, my office space has, African and just different cultural art and different things. And so, we definitely go through our check-ins and being able to engage clients on, in a way that they can relate. You can move on to the next slide and then so I think this goes more in depth in terms of looking at men's mental health. But I think we'll go into this a little bit more later, but I have this because right now, a lot of men are reaching out for services, Black women and Black men, and there's definitely a need for more groups, more outreach, more safe spaces for them to talk about the racism, the racial trauma that they're experiencing. I'm just gonna hand it back over to Linda.
Okay. Thank you very much. I love the colors. So I just wanted to start with a little quote from my elder. So nice to know that I have one or several. So there's something that he says all the time, and I just wanted to start with that, and then Del will speak. His name is Hadrian Simmons, and I want to give him credit. He's probably in the audience. So Hadrian says, basically, and it's something to really, 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 really ponder. Those who think themselves sane are probably the insane for thinking themselves sane. After 600 years in the Western Hemisphere, under chattel slavery, Jim Crow, the destruction of 200 documented self-sufficient Black communities, lynchings, segregation, heroin, affirmative action, beginning of the devaluing of the loss of Black culture by Black people, consumerism outside the Black community, embracing Eurocentric and Western-based Christianity, crack, prison industrial complex, foster care industrial complex, monetized charter schools, pharmaceutical industry complex, et cetera, et cetera. Perhaps they are in fact, the real insane, and those who are considered insane are really sane because they're only responding to acting normal under the circumstances identified for 600 years. So, in that, Del, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So, Sister Simona, you mentioned that some of your clients have dealt with the coronavirus or have been affected because they've lost friends or loved ones. So what new or different mental health issues have emerged since the COVID-19 pandemic shifted our entire way of living? And Sister Ayana, you can weigh in as well.
Well, some of the clients that I've been seeing in individual therapy, they were stable and they were doing well. And then a family member became sick. And then they started having a lot of anxiety. Unfortunately, in one case, numerous people had passed in that family. And then my client started having PTSD symptoms. And really, the PTSD also, created some major depression symptoms where the person felt at times suicidal. And so we're seeing the worsening of mental health, given the fact that so many people, especially here in Newark, so many people were affected in some way by the COVID-19.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm also seeing some obsessive compulsive.
If your relative dies from coronavirus, it's not good.
I'm sorry, continue,
Yes.
please.
So I'm also seeing some obsessive compulsive traits where clients are visiting the testing sites repetitively due to the anxiety that they're experiencing. And so it was because of the numerous clients that were affected, why I decided to start the group, the grief group, just to give them a safe space, given that, this was really something that was affecting the Black community the most.
Okay.
Ayana, yes. Okay.
She needs to be unmuted.
Let's see.
Can you unmute her?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. She's muted again. Okay.
There she is. Okay.
Okay, hi, yes. Very similarly to Simona, definitely these new levels of isolation are very significant in working with clients who already struggled in terms of their interpersonal relationships, working through levels of anxiety, significant depression, starting to see improvement in their treatment. And then we were hit with COVID. And now with the new level of isolation, I see more clients wanting to come back now to therapy, and which is pretty significant. And I wanted to just make mention that as a private practitioner, I do not work with insurance, so that my work is not limited with my clients. And my clients are still, despite the economic impact of COVID, still investing in themselves, in their mental health. And so I'm very proud that I have not lost clients because people see even more need now to maintain their mental health with all the issues, the racial unrest and everything that's going on in our society these days. I'm very happy to see that individuals, and Black individuals in particular, are continuing with their treatment.
That is encouraging, because I guess part of healing is knowing when you need help and when to reach out for help and to follow through and continue with your help. You mentioned isolation. So many Black and brown senior citizens have been devastated by COVID-19, if they're in nursing homes or assisted living. And I guess mid-March, visitation was halted to, I guess, professionals or those in the healthcare field. How can we help them maybe get back on track, and what therapies have you extended to our senior citizens during this time? And Ayana, you could start.
Okay. So this isn't largely the population that I work with directly, but my clients have grandparents, right? And they have their parents who are elderly, who they are extremely concerned about during this time. So we've been doing a lot of training around virtual interaction, trying to help grandma and mommy learn how to use technology so that they could stay in contact with one another. I've heard my clients doing a lot of, drive-bys just to check in, and while they can't be physically in contact with each other, just trying to maintain the connectivity through, visiting. I can talk to you through the front door, you stay in and stay safe, but try to do it continuously on a weekly basis, just to make sure that we're checking in. Because again, with the isolation, we worry that the geriatric population, with their access to medications and things like that, and realizing that they do experience stress and trauma and isolation anxiety, that we want to make sure that we're checking in on them to make sure there's no, we use the term affect management, taking the medications just to feel, or to feel better.
Yeah. Sister Mona, do you have anything to add to that?
So a majority of my clients are young adults. I see mostly teen, a lot of teen girls and young Black women and a few men. However, there are some clients who they can't see their parents, their grandparents, and are definitely doing virtual, FaceTime, phone calls. But I do see a decline, especially in April and in May, when everything was locked down. I definitely did see a decline in my clients' mental health because they were so isolated. They didn't have their family members that was their support system. And so now I think people are beginning to visit. They're traveling, they're going through the airports, they're trying to be safe. But before it was very devastating. And the same thing applies to the nursing home. They were being very careful, but now they're beginning to visit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. One more and then Linda.
Okay.
All right. Earlier, I think Ayana mentioned now that we're in the era of protest, that brings on even more stresses and issues for certain people. So how have the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain, and countless others, and the Black Lives Matter movement generally affected our community, and what can we do for one another?
I feel like I hear it on a daily basis, just particularly my Black clients and my Black male clients, my transgender clients, just their concerns about, what their identity, the meaning of their identity in this country. I had a client last week in a group share he made a heartbreaking comment saying that he is 23 years old and he still has not gotten his license because he doesn't want to have to deal with being racially profiled, and he doesn't want to have to deal with ultimately being murdered by the police. And so this inhibits his ability to get around and to be mobile and be active. And he is an artist, so he is limited in what he can participate in. So many of my clients feel they are no different than George Floyd. They are no different than Breonna Taylor. And so this is now, they're asking the question, am I next? So definitely working through that. And then there's the vicarious trauma of being a Black person myself, and having to navigate that experience and trying to provide support and motivation to try to see the good in this world that we live in and in our communities, and try to stay connected despite the urges to want to quit and to want to give up. So it is very challenging work, but needful work nonetheless. But yes, it's just the concern that as a Black person in America, is this an indication that this will be an experience that will hit home?
Okay, I have just a quick question for Simona and then a question to both of you. Simona, I know Ayana spoke to, she doesn't take insurance. And so do you take insurance? You want to speak to that? Do you always take insurance? What kind of insurance? Because I think people, they want to know that. That's the first thing, especially with so many people being out of work. Right. And so many people being unemployed, and a lot of people depended on their jobs for insurance. So can you speak to that a little bit?
So I'm paneled with 2 insurance companies. Do you want me to share which ones, or that's not necessary? Yeah, so Cigna and Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, Empire, any form of Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I'm a telehealth therapist at this time. So since March, I've been providing only phone and video sessions, and surprisingly, clients are still connecting, even though some of them, they were used to seeing me face to face. I've had so many new clients since March, and they are taken to this experience as though, it's something that they've been doing. Horizon is paying for the copay for clients, so that makes it easier. I'm not going to say all clients, but they're paying for maybe 95% of the client's copay. And so that is a huge help for individuals who would not have been able to afford the copay each week. I've always accepted insurance and also cash paying clients. I'm also a provider with the Victims of Crime Compensation Office because of all of the anti-violence work that I do. And so they're still, communicating with me. Anyone who is a victim of a crime, if they reach out to me, I can help them with the application process, and their therapy is free. Okay, and so I think considering all of the changes, it's been a smooth transitions with the 2 insurance companies that I'm paneled with, and individuals are calling every day wanting a therapy appointment. So, that's definitely a positive.
Okay, well, this question goes to both of you. I guess we can start with Ayana and come back, but it's something to ponder. From about the 1400s, before chattel slavery and after and up to about the 1960s, the Black community built their resilience to the trauma and things were going on, the lynching, the rape, all of that. But they navigated and negotiated that trauma of living in the Western Hemisphere. And they did it without things like heroin and crack and suicide. And they did it with dignity. So can you speak to what the difference is now, in terms of the Black community's ability to navigate and negotiate compared to what they figured out beforehand? And just as something to work with, a friend of mine was very concerned she wasn't able to travel. She just liked to jump up and go to Africa, Madagascar, go to Panama, wherever. And she wasn't able to do it like she was accustomed to because of the pandemic. And she was really having a hard time with that. So I just finished reading a book about solitary confinement. One of the former Black Panthers who served 44 years in solitary confinement. He served longer than virtually everybody in solitary confinement prison system. So it was there were a couple of interviews about him that I sent to her to make her feel a little better. So she could see that if somebody can survive in a room the size of a bathroom for 44 years, then it's possible. But he was old school, and he's been in prison since the 1970s. So he brought something different. He brought the resilience that existed beforehand. So do you want to just speak to that a little bit? Not looking for any particular answers, just having you kind of explore like what the differences are in terms of our community's ability to navigate through things and do it with dignity. And especially in light of the fact we have so many young men that we're finding them hung. And some people were saying that they committed suicide, but sometimes you question that, especially when the shoes are on different feet. But go ahead.
So the thought that's coming to me is I think that we have done, on a positive note to that question, I think what we have done in mental health in this country is we've done a good job at destigmatizing the need for the support. And so I think that it's a more acceptable or tolerable idea to swallow, particularly for us in the Black community, to go to therapy. Still, at this point in my career of nearly 20 years now, the fact that 75% of my clients are Black is huge. This is not largely the case. And we do not typically go to therapy. And we still thrive through, like you said, you described all the things that we did prior, right? During chattel slavery and all those times that we came together, we drew strength within our community, and our religious beliefs and our connectivity, our healthy relationships interpersonally, and we continue to do that. We continue to do that, and that still largely is the case. But I think in my experience of working with Black individuals is that they're feeling more comfortable, that is acceptable to get help and support with healing from the significant levels of trauma that they have been dealing with.
Simona?
So, not quite sure if I'm answering the question accurately, but I think what was different then was maybe the village, that whole village mentality, the culture. Whereas now we're very distracted, especially when we weren't in a pandemic, it was easier for us to just turn a blind eye and continue and not really pay attention to racism. So I do think being in this pandemic and the fact that we were forced to slow down and to stay home and to really look at these videos, I do think that that caused a lot of racial trauma for individuals, because there were so many videos back to back that was at our fingertips, right? We all have smartphones, we all have an iPad or something of that nature. And I think before, in terms of coping with the trauma, that community, that collective healing did something for the resilience. Whereas now I have individuals who are calling me and they're experiencing, just multiple trauma, intersectional trauma. I have clients who are immigrants who are extremely afraid right now because they believe that they could be deported any day now because of the different policies and laws that's coming out from this administration. I have clients who they know the story very well of having a loved one being killed through gang violence or even police brutality. And so now they're being re-traumatized by all of what they're seeing in the news and just social media. So I do think that the fact that we're in a pandemic, it's good that we're all paying attention, and that goes for all races. But at the same time, one of the things that I'm encouraging clients to do is to really limit how much news you watch, limit how much you go on social media, because you will see that news about the next shooting, the next Black person that gets killed. And so I think years ago, as I mentioned before, we didn't have all of that, at our fingertips. We knew that killing was happening and, the lynching and all of that. But it was just a whole different way of life than it is now.
All right, just a quick. So I think both of you kind of agree that when we were more of a we community versus an I community, that was to our benefit.
Yes.
Okay, so having said that, and this whole thing of white supremacy and racism it's not only impacting, and Yana, you just talked about your population you serve, and Simona, population you serve. It appears that this is also having an impact on the Caucasian community. All these things that are happening. Do you notice that from, if you have any clients from that community, if it's having any impact? They see George Floyd and all the news media that we see every day if you allow yourself to be exposed to it.
I definitely see younger college students really wanting to understand why this is happening. In terms of people that I know, you know, some of these people who are protesting, they know someone who's Black, you know, they have friends, or, you know, and they love the Black culture, you know, and I just think it's an awakening where they're not necessarily going ahead with their parents' belief or their grandparents' belief. So what I'm seeing are a lot more young college students really wanting to make a difference because their classmates, you know, their friends or whoever are being affected. And they don't want this as part of their generation.
Yana, you want to
I
speak to
agree. Yeah, I agree. Same for me, Simona indicated. I feel like for my white clients who are concerned about what's going on in the world and wanting to know how they can get involved and what they can do, and that they are hurt by the fact that a lot of these ideals are taught in their home, were taught in their homes as they grew up. But these young people, I mean, they are ready for action. But it's interesting that I am not hearing that so much in my experience from older white people. The question for me has been, this must be, you know, this must be hard for you. Or they're checking in on me, you know, to see how I'm doing. But it doesn't seem like it's been something that they've been personally aware of as being impactful for themselves.
Okay, well, I'm going to hand it over to Dell.
Sure. My colleague Reggie has put an article from The Guardian about Albert Woodfox in the chat, and we will include that on our Facebook page. We do have a couple of questions and a comment. Here's a question. It was mentioned that the training for social workers, therapists is very Eurocentric in traditional college programs. Do you have any suggestions on how MSW or psychology programs could do a better job on providing more focus on cultural humility or better prepare therapists? The social work field is overrepresented, with white women who are not always providing a good service to people of color.
Yeah, I'd say the first step is admitting Black students to the programs. I thought about this earlier. When I was in my MSW program, I was one of 4, and 3 female and 1 male. So there was only 1 Black male in my entire MSW program of about 300 or so students. So that's the initial problem, is allow us the opportunity, create opportunities for access to Black people to get into the fields. And then from the inside, we can make change. So, you know, I currently work with a university and am looking to work particularly with MSW programs to try to offer. I definitely do trainings on cultural humility. So thank you, Margaret, for that question. But I am trying to do my part, and that's what I would recommend. And I think we do need the allyship of our white counterparts to speak up about this issue, that if it matters to us, it matters to you as well. And going back to what Linda said earlier, it's about the we, right? The collective. It's not just how it impacts a particular group, but how it impacts all of us.
I just want to add that after I completed my MSW at Fordham, you know, Fordham is very expensive. I also went and I did a psychoanalytic certification program, because at that time I had a lot of interest in working with children and youth. And then after that, I still had to pay for other programs. And one of them is the undoing racism, sorry, undoing racism. And they do trainings in different states. And Rutgers also has healing circles that they do throughout, I believe throughout Essex County. I'm not quite sure if they're in other places as well. So I think attending trainings as a social worker, can you see me okay?
Yes.
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 So I think attending additional trainings. The training doesn't end in graduate school.
Right.
Being on the lookout, connecting with individuals who care about Black mental health is also very important. I do think one of the things that the universities can also do is have more books about racial trauma, about Black mental health. There are so many authors right now, this is what they do. You know, they're really wanting to give their clients something. And so I think most of us in private practice, especially, you know, I have a lot of friends, they were forced to write a book because that book doesn't exist. And so books, more professors who are Black, who cares about you know, racial trauma, who cares about, you know, racial identity work. But I do love the program that Rutgers started recently, and it's about really hearing both sides. You know, hearing from white people and other races, and for everyone to really sit and learn from each other. And it's a very positive, very, very positive experience. And this is something I believe they started a year ago now.
Okay. We have a comment. It says, yes, it has always been a weak community with very limited education of what really mental illness is. We dealt with it the best we knew how. Too often, we keep mental challenges to ourselves. And, Simone, I think it's awesome that you are inviting men into the space. And can you just talk a little bit about that? Then we have another question, and we'll have to begin our wrap up. But if you can talk about how you have managed to get Black men involved in their own mental health and mental well-being.
Right, so a huge part of my my work as a clinical social worker, I've always worked with women. But last year I did notice an increase with men who were reaching out. And I do think because a lot of the celebrities were beginning to talk about the fact that they were in therapy and that it was going well, you know, Charlemagne the God. I also think our president and, you know, our first lady even sharing their story of being in couples therapy was also powerful, Jay-Z. And so last year, there were a lot of men that were reaching out. And these are Black men, not just African-American, but some from the Caribbean, some from Africa. And they came in with a lot of addiction and trauma, just a lot of the intersectional oppression that we're seeing in these parts. And I was forced to get another male therapist to collaborate with, and he was able to run a group. And we also had that same group, you know, have meditation bi-weekly here at my practice as well. And so I do think the tide is shifting. Yes, you're right, Ayana, like more people are beginning to understand the need. Even our community, they're beginning to understand that it's okay to not be okay, and they're reaching out.
Okay, we have a few more minutes, but if you could just touch on this a bit. Children who were attending school in person were not able to do so from mid-March through the end of the school year. And the next academic year is in question for all students. That would be pre-K through collegiate. How can we as a community help all of the students? Ayana? Yeah.
Sure. I think modeling here is going to be key. How we as adults manage our own stress will then give freedom for our children to be able to know how to express their own anxiety. You know, in my home, I have 3 children. We talked about this, and we just got back from taking a vacation because I saw how stressed, we took the risk of getting them out the house because I saw the level of stress and how it had impacted them of just being, you know, your family, you love one another, but it's a lot of time in the house and a lot of those, you know, social activities they weren't able to participate in. And it's so significant for, again, their own psychological health and well-being. So I think a big part of it is how are we as the adults in the home dealing with it? If it's stressing us out, and rightfully so, I think validating that, you know, that this is abnormal. These are unprecedented times and we don't always know how to react to this. So as an adult, I'm going to let you know that it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to be nervous. But we're going to figure it out within our community, within our family, how to get through all of this. So I think as the adults, just trying to give them those examples that it's okay, validating and acknowledging the craziness that we're in the middle of. And then I think the kids can learn from us.
I think right now, helping them to understand that some things did remain the same. I also have 2 little ones, 2 daughters, 4 and 7, so very active. And so reminding them that some things did remain the same is very important because they're asking for all these wonderful places and things that we used to do, and they're out of our reach. I think another thing that is coming up for kids is the fact that this is a racial pandemic. And so they're asking questions too about racism. And so now we're looking for books or, you know, just some type of video. We're having, you know, we were having before, but we're definitely having more conversations now about race. And I do notice a difference when we leave the home and they have to interface with other people, you know, they're watchful.
Yeah.
They're watchful. And the schools that they attend doesn't really necessarily represent them, you know, in terms of the teachers, the principal, but not all the teachers, not enough Black teachers. And so it's very challenging. School is a very triggering topic for me personally. So yes, you're right, Ayana, like our kids is just as good as we are, the parents, right?
Yeah, and sometimes we're a mess, so.
Yeah, thank you. We all are. So we all have work to do. We have to continue to help one another. Thank you ever so to Simona Badger, Ayana DaSilva. Thank you to our behind the scenes tech support, Diego Quintero, my colleague Reggie Blanding, and Linda, would you have some final remarks? Then I'll close us out.
No, for a change. I know this is unusual, but I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks everyone for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you. So please join us next week as we discuss from arrest to arraignment. And we will have Connie McGee, Prosecutor Connie McGee, Darrell S. Pennington, and Private Investigator Manuel Gomez, who will talk about what happens from arrest to arraignment. And we appreciate all of you. Be safe, wear a mask, vote, fill out your census form.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.